Starting in late August and continuing through a riotous final Saturday of October, the list of title contenders in the Football Bowl subdivision has been trimmed to a select few. Rosy expectations have given way to reality, as revealed Tuesday night by the debut college football playoff rankings. The list of true contenders for the two national semifinals numbers little more than a dozen. If small in number, the list does encompass each of the Power 5 conferences. Led by the Southeastern Conference, which placed Georgia atop the first rankings and had Alabama close behind in second, each of the major FBS leagues has at least one team ranked in the top 12. It was passionate debate when we were discussing Georgia and Alabama over the course of the past 2 days, said College Football Playoff Selection Committee Chairman Kirby Hockett, the athletics director at Texas Tech. What gave Georgia a very slight edge over Alabama this week in the eyes of the selection committee were really the two top 25 wins that Georgia has, over Mississippi State, but specifically over Notre Dame. At other times in the brief history of the playoff, which made its debut 3 seasons ago, the dialogue around the first standings would center on which conference faced the specter of being left out in the cold. It's happened to the Big 12 Conference, which had 2 teams just outside the top 4 in 2014, and a year later with the Pac-12 Conference. The math leads to musical chairs, 4 spots, 5 conferences. This season could be different. Instead, the question doesn't ask which one conference will be left out, but rather which conferences, meaning multiple, could find themselves without a team in the national semifinals. Thanks to Notre Dame's surge from last season's losing finish to number 3 in the debut rankings. The Fighting Irish, now 7-1 after Saturday's 35-14 win against number 20 North Carolina State, are the potential fly in the ointment for 2 Power 5 leagues. Consider the scenario where Notre Dame runs the table through November. All told, the team's postseason resume would include wins against 5 opponents in the current playoff rankings: Michigan State, Southern California, North Carolina State, Miami, Florida, and Stanford. Given that Notre Dame's lone loss came to Georgia, and even that by just a single point, the program would have an extremely valid case for a top 4 seed. "We have to be aware of our situation," Notre Dame coach Brian Kelly said on the Rankings Reveal show on ESPN. "We've been in a 1-game playoff since that loss to Georgia. We are 2/3 of the way through the season and have to play well the next 4 games. The 4-team field will already sideline one major conference. Notre Dame's inclusion would eliminate another. The idea that a member of the group of 5 could make an out-of-nowhere push for the semifinals isn't realistic. Even as number 18 Central Florida adds wins upon wins, the Knights aren't a legitimate option to move ahead of any unbeaten or one-loss conference champion. But Notre Dame is. After all, the Irish are already ahead of the top-ranked teams from the Big 12, Pac-12, Atlantic Coast Conference and Big Ten Conference. The gap may grow, given the Irish's tough November schedule, or widen to an unmanageable distance, should those leagues put forth a 2-loss champion. For both the Pac-12 and Big 12, the trump card may be a conference title game. Notre Dame's season ends at Stanford on November 25, while every other league plays an additional game the following Saturday. But this train of thought can go one step further. Notre Dame's resurgence draws the potential for 2 major conferences to miss the playoff. Over in the SEC, meanwhile, that Alabama and Georgia seem on course for an unbeaten-only title game in early December means the 3 leagues, not 2, are left settling for a New Year's Six bowl and nothing more. "Alabama is an impressive team," Hockett said. "Just the convincing victories in the way they achieved those solidified them at the number 2 spot. This scenario requires help, unlike the possibility of Notre Dame simply earning its way into a semifinal. In the Big Ten Conference, for example, number 6 Ohio State might need to lose again in November, which would be the Buckeyes' 2nd loss, and then defeat Wisconsin to claim the conference title. In the Big 12, each of 3 one-loss teams, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State and TCU, would need to lose. Stanford would need to top Washington on November 10 to give every Pac-12 team at least 2 defeats. then Georgia needs to beat Alabama. In that case, Georgia is an easy decision for the top seed. Given how the selection committee views Alabama, and not just this week, but throughout the seeding process, a narrow loss might knock the Crimson Tide down just 2 spots to third, which would avoid a rematch with Georgia, while giving the second seed a semifinal site within some level of geographic proximity. That's if everything goes to script, or, for up to 3 Power 5 conferences, against the script. To be fair, hypothetical scenarios tend to have a short shelf life in college football. Yet the first rankings showed something new. Even in a sport often defined by chaos, this season's playoff push has the possibility of becoming the wildest to date.